Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the July 8th, 2021 installment of the David Shove Memorial Midstream Reading Series. I'm Mimi Jennings. Our host is Paul Mattis. We are happy to gather again virtually to hear some fine musicians and four excellent writer-readers. And speaking of our complicated history, I speak from my home in St. Paul on unceded native land. The Midstream Writing Series acknowledges we live and write in Minnesota, the ancestral and present sacred homeland of the Dakota people, near territories of the Anishinaabe and the Ho-Chunk. We honor Native resilience and resistance through a history of broken promises, unjust treaties, genocide. We support them as its traditional sovereign custodians. One more time, thank you so much. You were just great. And you were just getting warmed up, you could tell. Shoot. Housekeeping. I will read a couple of poems of my own, then I'll introduce each reader who will unmute and read for 15 minutes. As attendees, please, number one, substitute icons and vigorous visual applause for the noise we usually make in person. Two, use the chat for your own short comments and to see what our artists have posted there. If you need to save the chat, click on its three dots. You can find them just by hovering over the chat. After the readings, join in the Q&A. Thank you. Our foot, a human measure. Note, a degenerate foot is a one-syllable metrical foot. I want a one-beat word, innocent of genitalia for my kind. No fair man, with its able see, its one vote, its created equal. I need a fee-man, not mean, one syllable for my race, an all embrace, no asterisk. Want to recognize myself, my girls and my he girls in our degenerate foot. I miss a me in there, you guys, an us for us. What one foot would do? Girls not ready, one's broad, femme narrow, degenerate slut, tart, lay make my case. I want my beat to be a sharing thing, 1 foot for all. People's got 2 feet, made of humus, human too as well. Thinking clay. And curriculum vitae for an optimist after Liesl Mueller. My parents were happy during the Second World War. They saw little of each other. Pinkish face, black banged, English tongued, grandmother Gaelic gone. I was second daughter. We were 8. Then came a boy. Lake children, feet fluttered, hands caught fish, eyes that swallowed, I read in a red brick building, established 1914. Women in black we called sister, explained in cursive what X equaled. Alive as a kick in a tantrum, I had more energy than a desk contained, more questions than was safe. I learned to lie, even in confession. Fingertips reading, I explored my second sex. Alive as a road, I roamed French streets, African ways, caught Detroit softballs. I had a salle de classe. And 2 sunny baby girls, now mothers, now far. I cultivate my garden, the scorn of my father in his dress pinks, the flint of fury mother took with her to the grave. My whistle can stop a stampede. Like yesterday's urgency, I am weathered, but not unimportant. Alive as a line on a page, I'm a poet, here to rail. A priest, I've come to bless. Sharon Chmielarz was born and raised in South Dakota, 3 miles from the Missouri River and Standing Rock Reservation. She lives in Minnesota. Her visibility, 10 miles, was a finalist for the 2015 Midwest Book Awards. Kirkus Reviews named both The Widow's House and The J Horoscope among the best 100 indie books of 2016 and 2019. Her latest book, her 13th, is Speaking in Riddles. Her poems have appeared in magazines like the Notre Dame Review, the Iowa Review, Prairie Schooner, and the Hudson Review. Sharon.
Thank you. I like Notre Dame. Thank you, everybody, for zooming in. Thank you, Mimi and Paul for hosting. Mimi for hosting and Paul for doing the technology. I'm going to, and wherever you are, Dave, punning or pondering, thank you also. I'm going to read 4 poems and then a few riddles, depending on what time I have. It's 7:40 and 15 means. Oh, I'm so terrible at math. 7:40, 7:50, 7:55. Okay. This book, Little Eternities, it's reflections on time. I'm going to read 2 poems from it. The first one is Time Traveler. You are leaving or arriving, all the same in deep time. Paleolithic, pharaonic, outer galactic, or old Gallic, all the same in deep time. In your place, you are here today. You can film it, you can pin it down in ink, you can try, but no one's seen it like you've seen it. I have seen you in your jacket, once a robe on an ancient Hittite tablet. And then Little Eternities, an energetic but murky mating in the bog. Frogs thick in the muck, no leg room between. Not like patio chairs arranged to stand apart from each other. Not like families separated by miles or rage. Not like ghosts of those long gone. Rather like crowding into a blinding urge to dwell intensely. Look at shimmering leaves in sunlight. They never move alone, unless you remember autumn's last leaf dangling on a branch. But you won't. In spring, you won't favor a clan of faded ladies. I too deadhead to abet the next blossom. Once, I walked in a field of peonies, of every color and sheared petal. Blue dragonflies also visited. The rain had stopped, and the sun hadn't yet unleashed its strongest beat. Thus, around noon, for long moments, we were all together. So then we come to the J horoscope, which is a reimagining of some old stories you might have heard, brought up to date. This one is called, and it's a prose poem. This one is called The First Old Woman to Have an Egg Planted Between Her Legs. Not that she didn't look at men, especially young men, The shirtless gardener, his nice muscly chest, curvy brown shoulders, flat tummy caving down to the hairy place where the cock crows mornings, stirring and sweet. How old was she having these 7th grade fantasies? He, her husband, had been up to all of them when they were young. You can't get pregnant from a wink, though, which is about all she'd get from the gardener. She was old, for heaven's sakes, groaning with arthritis, to be truthful, fearful. How would her bones hold up under the load of a man? But she had a dream and couldn't shake it. Why not make use of science? Didn't it promise a longer life? Cures, babies, all the things she once prayed for, clear skin, shiny hair. What you need today is money, a good doctor, a phone, and an insurance policy cheaper than a 10% tithe. Who'd want a kid when she's 60? Some of her friends, grandmothers all, asked. Was it wise? When you're 70, they'd clucked. The kid'll only be 10. Wise schmize. She wanted her dream lying red-faced and nibbling at her nipple. On the day the magic happened, for all the neighbors to see, she'd have a diaper run up the front yard's flagpole, followed by her red AA bra. You fly. And this poem is named Where One Becomes Two. The old fox has died. Now his mate is alone. Now she must cross the river alone. Look, in the water, 2 foxes. Now I'm going to read you some riddles. This book came out this year. It's called Speaking in Riddles. It has an owl on the cover. And the epigraph. I'm going to read you the epigraph. It's from a poem by Zbigniew Herbert, a poem called To Ryszard Kreinecke, a Letter. Quote, what forces of the spirit do we need, blindly beating despair against despair, to ignite a spark, a word of atonement? I don't know, my friend, and that's why I send you these owl's riddles in the night. The riddles don't have names because the name is the solution. So they just have numbers. This is number 5. Some are found in wet lowlands, while others prefer drier uplands. The difference is striking, since the place is ingrained. Still, others can sing of both lands, hampering field identification, but making for a pleasant outing. Now you see your chat board. I would like you to guess at the solution, please. Right now, don't be bashful. I'll reread some lines. Some are found in wet lowlands. I don't see any guesses yet. While others prefer drier uplands, the difference is striking. Still, others can sing of both lands, hampering field identification. Field identification? Thank you, Ranae. Oops, I suppose I should. Well, it says to everyone. Yes, but that's not the solution I came out with. That's another good guess. Oh, you grit pickers, it's birds. Live in wet lowlands, other dry uplands. However, there is an alternative solution that I came up with, and that is transgenders. All right, moving right along to number 3. In rows of once outlasted us, 1,000 and then some years, we watch and cheer, the sound rebounds, the walls come down in 20 years. In rows of what once outlasted us, 1,000 and then some years, we watch and cheer, the sound rebounds, the walls come down in 20 years. Walls coming down in 20 years. Is that a tough one? We watch and cheer. Ding, 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 ding. Yes, Naomi. And Karen, that's a good one too. The stadiums, they used to last 1,000 years. Think of the Romans and the Greeks. And today, we got them for 20 years and $1 billion. All right, what time is it? 7:49. I've got a few more minutes. Let's try this one. Some scenes lend themselves to being what they are, one lower, one higher. Everything unseen seems gone, as if swallowed. Imagination's rambunctious, but not always a trusty guide. One wonders whether or not to ascend. Do you see any bones of those who climbed and didn't make it? In the middle, you may feel you're in a country of its own, tucked in by a railing. Do some scenes lend themselves to being what they are, one lower, one higher? You're really close, Karen. Oh, Ranae, you hit it. Ranae, have you got a copy of this book? Yes, yes. No, she says. Yes, it's a staircase. Here especially the barren lands between stories. Do you see any bones of those who climbed and didn't make it? In the middle, you may feel you're in a country of its own, tucked in by a railing. And I try to make these as little poems also, half poem, half mind teaser. Because in the early days, the ancients did write their riddles as poems. And some were as long as 2 pages. And most, if they used any implement from the Dark Ages, for example, I could never guess what it was. I had to have the solution because their tools were named different from the way we are. Spit it out, Sharon, from our tools. All right. I'll do one more. Riddle number 37. This is easy, I think. This is one of the most mindless events in your life. And you do it over and over. You just sit or stand or squat and let it run. Or splat, gush, tinkle, oh piddle, let it rip. As number 1, it may also leak. It's usually over after the last drip. Good riddance. All right. I don't know what micturation means, Frank Hudson, but I'm sure somebody does. And I know what urinating means. I call it the art of the pee. So there. Thank you all for listening.
How could we not? Thank you, Sharon. Hard act to follow, but Dave gets to do it. Dave Healy is a recovering academic, having taught literature and composition and directed writing centers at Bethel College, now Bethel University, and the U of M's General College, late lamented General College. He edited the Writing Center Journal, Public Art Review, and the Park Bugle, a community newspaper. His poetry and essays have been published in the Minneapolis Review of Baseball, Elysian Fields Quarterly, Turtle Quarterly, New Plains Review, Dash, Voices for the City, and Minnesota Memories. He and his wife, Nancy, live in a 111-year-old house in St. Paul. In over 60 years, as a baseball fan, he has never once caught a foul ball. Dave.
I'm going to read 8. I'm going to read 8 poems. They don't represent a theme, but they do follow an arc of sorts, which might be called It Gets Better. I first encountered that statement from the columnist Dan Savage, who addressed it to his LGBTQ readers. It gets better. By appropriating that message for the poems I'll read tonight, I don't mean that the poems will necessarily improve as I move along, but rather that their tone will become more optimistic. So, as you begin listening, don't despair. It gets better. One other preliminary note. I write some formal poetry. A poem's form is more evident when you see it on the page than when you hear it read. On the assumption that your apprehension might be improved by knowing a poem's form, and at the risk of appearing pedantic, when introducing a formal poem, I'll alert you to its specific form. This first one is an Italian sonnet. Farm auction. She told him gently he should stay away, should drive the rusted pickup into town. She didn't say, but hoped that he would down a couple cold ones, maybe even play a jukebox song or two. But Saturday, against a grim backdrop of fields turned brown, he stood in back and tried instead to drown his sorrows in a dream of new-mown hay. She had her turn a week ago. The cows she knew by name filed meekly up a ramp and disappeared into a cavernous truck. Today he watches as his discs and plows are auctioned off. How can they revamp a life they thought would never come unstuck? Another sonnet, this one in the English or Shakespearean form. Reenactors. It seems the war itself was not enough. The cannonade, the body-littered field, the severed sleeve, the unknown stuff of undreamed dreams, the lips forever sealed. All are mere props for weekend warriors whose exhumation of the sleeping past disrupts the ghosts that these crass couriers of grief add blithely to their wretched cast. They count each stitch in every uniform, but who can count the unstitched wounds of war? Their borrowed bravery ignores the worm that fouls their game and burrows to its core. There is no need to bring dead wars to life. we've learned more than we need to know of strife. Everyone has at least a few pandemic poems. Here's one of mine. A New Testament. I do not touch. To refrain from touching is to show my love. When I see a man who has fallen among thieves, I pass by on the other side. I do this because I love him. When guests fail to arrive at the great supper I have given, I do not go out into the highways and byways, do not invite the poor and the maimed and the blind to dine with me. I eat alone because of the great love I have for the world. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, he is in their midst. None are gathered. There is no midst. Where is he? I wrote this next poem 4.5 years ago. I hope that it's now obsolete. The title is a nod to Robert Frost. Something there is. If we build it, will they come? If we build it, how high and long? High enough to shut out the sun, long enough to enclose our fear? Will one be enough? Will it ever be enough? Can a partition admit contrition? Can we safely hedge our bets? Who will watch o'er this rampart? Who will help us unlearn long division? Can we wall them out without walling ourselves in? When our progeny orbit this lonely planet, how many great walls will they see? Hand me another brick. I can still hear a heart beating. Your perspective on a good many things changes when you have children, and then again when you have grandchildren. I wrote this poem for my grandson, Kenta David. It's called Shanghai. I wish we'd done a better job for you. I fear the rising tide we've guaranteed will leave you shanghaied on a shrinking shore. We have not been good stewards of the store that was bequeathed to us, nor have we left for you and yours the soil in which to seed a future. Ours was not to wonder why the earth was warming to our toxic touch. Ours was but to deal out death to every living thing that threatened to obstruct our headlong rush to riches, giving the lie to any treaty that required a cap on our unbounded gluttony and greed. I hope you can forgive our heedless ways. I hope your generation finds a path through all the detritus we've left behind. We have laid waste our powers and taken that which was not ours. With what is left, make do, make over, make unplain each hill and mountain. May you devote your heart and soul and mind to honoring the gifts you have been given. Redeem the time and salvage what you can. My fervent prayer is that somehow you find within yourself the wherewithal to climb out of the ruts we've gouged upon the earth and claim the fragile promise of rebirth. This corner. The world is too much with us, old Bill said. Perhaps the world is too much because of us. Too much to comprehend, too much to fix. A corner of the world is quite enough to handle, to brighten and green, to tend, to keep well swept, to leave better than we found it. Huxley said, the only corner of the universe you can be certain of improving is your own self. Bullshit. Let us risk uncertainty and forego self-improvement. Let us join those from Earth's four corners and put this great grand house of ours in order. This next poem is a quintina, which is a variation on a sestina, which is a rather fussy French form. In a sestina, the same 6 words or variations thereof are used at the end of each 6 lines in a stanza. There are 6 stanzas, and the order of the 6 line-ending words is prescribed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 1, 5, 2, 4, 3, 3, 6, 4, 1, 2, 5, and so forth. The sestina ends with an envoy employing all 6 words. It's usually written in iambic pentameter. A quintina, which one might think of as a poor man's sestina, changes 6 to 5, the same 5 words repeated in 5 line stanzas with a 1-line envoy employing all 5 words. In my poem, the 5 words are these: sunrise, belief, renewal, loss, and garden. The poem is titled Earth Day Quintina. This is not Earth Day, but in reading it tonight, I'm taking a page from my father's book. Once on Father's Day, I asked, so when is Children's Day? To which my father replied, every day is Children's Day. So in that spirit, every day is Earth Day. Earth Day Quintina. The people gathered waiting for the sunrise. The endless night had tested their belief that anything so chancy as renewal could counteract collective pain and loss, transforming barrenness to God's green garden. It's when you think there's nothing left to lose, when winter's chill says, don't you dare believe that there will ever be another sunrise, that anyone naively still plants gardens or yet thinks ancient things can be renewed. When all the world's bereft of true believers and every call that's issued for a gardener is met with mass mistrust and hearing loss, when cynics scoff at prospects of renewal and darkness gives the lie to rising suns. When bread is asked but stones are given, and garden shears are beaten into swords, and sunrise stalls and even children can't believe, when nothing overdue can be renewed, when nothing's found and everything is lost. Just then, the first faint signs of spring's renewal suggest a world that's more than cold and loss. Draw forth the couch potato to the garden. Draw back the curtain that obscured the sunrise, and draw the people back into belief. The garden's rising sun renews our lost belief. And finally, a villanelle. Don't listen. Don't listen to the voice that whispers no, the one that echoes softly in your head. Believe in yes, and you will make it so. There's always someone telling tales of woe. There's always someone turning gold to lead. Don't listen to the voice that whispers no. The voice that tells you what you need to know when asked for stone will surely answer bread. Believe in yes, and you will make it so. You need not reap what others blindly sow. You need not lie on someone else's bed. Don't listen to the voice that whispers no. A melody is playing, sweet and low, that cancels out the noise of fear and dread. Believe in yes, and you will make it so. The word you need was uttered long ago. Its message is the truest ever said. Don't listen to the voice that whispers no. Believe in yes, and you will make it so.
And that's Dave Healy. Thanks again. You want to shake your hands in front of your screen for Dave again, please. Wonderful, wonderful. Ranae Lenor Hanson, educator and climate activist, taught writing and global studies at Minneapolis College for 31 years. Her roots among a community of storytellers in the northern wilderness watersheds of Minnesota, plus the lives and stories of her students and her diagnosis in adulthood of type 1 diabetes, have all taught her ways that bodies parallel ecosystems. Her BA is literature and writing, her PhD in cross-cultural education. Watershed, attending to the body and earth in distress, her meditation on intimate connections between bodily health and biome health, came out last month from the University of Minnesota Press. Ranae.
Thanks, Mimi. And apologies to you all for not being a poet, but we'll see what we can do without definite line breaks here. I'm going to read from Watershed, and I'm going to borrow from Dave and say, it could get better. It's up to us. The first thing I'm going to read is from the pre-pages. This is Roman numeral 14, Navigating the Waters of This Book. When you lower a canoe into a wide river, several points on the far shore call you toward them. A similar handful of journeys will open before you when you enter these pages. This book follows multiple arcs, not a single straight line. Consider it a braid with varied story strands woven together. Let yourself be taken by its currents, trusting that they will lead you to a destination that is life-giving for you. You will explore stories of group efforts to save mangrove swamps in Saudi Arabia, of drought in Ethiopia, of messages from the past on rocks above crooked rivers in northern Minnesota, of diabetic crisis in a St. Paul ICU ward. But the most important story you will uncover as you read will be your own. You may hear the voice of your climate-stressed body. You may find a way home to your own watershed. And then from the beginning of chapter 1, which is called Where Waters Divide, this is spring. Each child's fate is linked to that of its natal watershed. On a late May day, my mom finished planting her garden next to the small trailer where she and Dad lived, just south of Lake Bemidji. The Mississippi headwaters begin at Lake Itasca, then flow north into Lake Bemidji, meander south after that toward the Gulf of Mexico. 30 miles north of Bemidji, as far north as Itasca is south, lies Red Lake, home waters for the Red Lake Nation of the Ojibwa. Red Lake lets out to join the Red River, which flows north toward Lake Winnipeg, and then to the Nelson River, and on to Hudson Bay. When Mom stood up to walk toward the house Dad was building, her water broke. I came into a land fed by rain and by snow, a land of swamps where two great river systems begin their journeys, one flowing north and one flowing south. I'm not going to read about that first watershed. I'm going to jump you to where I mostly grew up, which was on the shores of Birch Lake that flows into the Kawishwa and then the Boundary Waters wilderness. This is from another spring after I'd finally found my way into the land. The woods had caught me. The trees taught me lessons. The wolves had sung to me. I became known to my place on earth. I let my feet grow into the shallow soil, found nurturing cracks in the rocks. My hair was pollinated by the wind. I became part of the land. Like most others, I arrived foreign, but slowly I became earth. In early spring, water formed new rivulets out of each bank of snow. The snow would be deep and white, the water clear and cold. I washed my boot bottoms in the running streams. The edges of the snowbanks curled back to reveal trails on which small animals had run all winter, safe beneath a covering of snow. In our town, snow that melts and rain that falls washes into the creek behind the high school and flows with it to the Embarrass River. That river moves on to join the St. Louis and out to Lake Superior. However, if our rainfall and snow melt sink deeply enough into the ground, they join the water table that flows north to the edges of the lake where we live. Springs seep out just above lake level. Joining the lake, the water flows east to meet the Kawishwa River, then the White Iron Chain of lakes, and at Land's End, Hudson Bay. When snow clings to the top of our car and then drops off after the ridge 45 miles west, it runs south to join the Mississippi. This swampy land divides the waters. In spring, I would watch the waters set out. As the weather warmed, I'd return to the pond. First, I would go wrapped in my coat and a blanket. The pond, called Minnow Lake on local maps, is kidney-shaped, made up of two bays that connect down the middle. Loons shouldn't land there. Once I watched a loon walk awkwardly across the road from the pond to the lake, unable to become airborne after landing on so small a surface. It almost fell on its chest as it crossed the road because its legs were too far back to balance its weight. The turtles I met fared better. They could walk across the road to either side and find a place to swim. I would curl myself into the body-shaped nook at the top of a rock that rose just off the shore of the pond, and I would read. Mallards would swim by me in pairs. Dragonflies would land. Sometimes, looking up from a page, I'd see a beaver's head and tail across the other bay. Deer would come to drink by the far shore. Blackbirds would sing. Mergansers would settle down. Some days I'd hike to the far side and read under the birches. I planned to build my house one day beyond the swampy inlet where pines crowned the rise. At the pond I read novels by women, Brontes, Alcott, Austen. For school I read the acknowledged great men, but at the pond women were allowed. Back near the shore below the house in evening, fireflies blinked through the valley. Frogs called. One late spring, the breeze beckoned me out. I rose in the night, wrapped in a blanket, and went out onto the moonlit grass. I lay with the blanket over both me and the earth. Wind soughed through the pines that grew near. Loons wailed across the lake. I was at home. I'm not going to read any of my students' stories. You have to get the book for that. I'm going to read a little bit about the night I came home from Regent's Hospital ICU as an acknowledged diabetic, from diabetic ketone acidosis to on my own at home. Here's what happened. Before I went to bed, I was to test my blood sugar and then give the amount of correction insulin that my instruction booklet advised. I sat on my bed, ready. I pulled out the bottle of test strips and the meter and the lancing device. I laid them beside me. I was tired, but I had been told I had to test my blood sugar right before going to sleep. Getting the lance into the lancing device was not difficult, but I couldn't remember how to cock the plastic machine. I turned it over. I pressed the button. At last, I remembered to pull on the end of the thing. It was ready. I put the device onto my finger and pressed the button again. Ouch! Blood spurted out. I put blood on one of the strips and stuck the strip into the meter. The meter sent me a message. Used test strip. Insert new strip and apply blood. It wasn't a used strip. It was a new one. I tried again. Same message. Each test strip cost 25 cents. I had just ruined 2. The blood on my finger had dried up. My meter is beeping at me. Excuse me while I shut it up. My pump, that is. Okay, back to this. It's always hard. It just stays confusing when you're a diabetic. I don't know if any of you know this, but I'm telling you here. I vaguely remembered that maybe I was supposed to put the strip in the meter and then put on the blood. I tried that. Strip upside down, I read on the meter. Remove and reinsert. How was I supposed to know which side was up? I did as the small machine instructed. I pulled out the strip and stuck it in the other way. Again, the meter messaged me. Used test strip. Insert new strip and apply blood. I took out another strip. I put it in the meter, right way up. I put my bloody finger on the strip. Strip underfilled, said the meter. Insert new strip and apply blood. I tried once more. Wrong again. I had not waited long enough for the meter to be ready for the blood. Used test strip. Insert new strip and apply blood. 5 used and useless strips lay on my bed. My head was foggy with tiredness. I had been given a helpline number to call. I was too tired to call. I was too ashamed to call. Hadn't the nurse shown me how to do this? Was I too stupid to learn? I remembered my mother saying, sometimes you have to quit trying at night. Sometimes the tasks come easier in the morning. Before going to the hospital, I had been producing 1 small bag of trash each month. Already, just 1 day into diabetes, my bed was strewn with trash strips, none of them recyclable. I dumped the whole lot on the floor and pulled the blankets over my ears. I was going to sleep. If I died in the night, then I died. If morning came, well, maybe this pricking job would be easier. Life does not unfold smoothly when basic flows and balances are disrupted. If one element of the body falters, if our beta cells die, then other systems fail. Without beta cells, insulin cannot be produced. Without insulin, the cells cannot open to sugar. Without sugar, the mitochondria cannot create energy. Without energy, the mitochondria and their encircling cells die. Without energy, the brain cannot think clearly, the feet stumble, the body falls, the knees get scraped. Those scrapes do not heal. So too the earth. One thing off course alters the flow of other things. If the ice breaks off, the shore is not where the seals expected. If birds migrate based on the position of the stars, but the flowers bloom based on the heat of the atmosphere, then the birds on their long journeys will not find their necessary food at the places where they are accustomed to landing. The body tries other ways to create motion and activity. It burns protein from the muscles. That burning creates byproducts poisonous to the body, ketones. Ketones cascade toward death. So too, the warming of the earth creates excessive water vapor, fogging the air. The melting of the permafrost may release methane. Both water vapor and methane cause further warming. One danger piles upon another. Soon, many systems collapse. If the collapse is extensive enough, the body dies. And now I'm going to read some of the meditations, 3 of them, that come between other sections. Consider the need to stop. How, in throes of crisis, can you pause? How, in the midst of adventure, can you remember to survey the surroundings for both danger and possibility? Once you notice a danger, how will you respond? When might you choose to give up? What is more important than your ongoing life? The voice of the body. What, just now, is the nearest body trying to say? Yes, that one, the one that is you. Do you hear it? Will you be still and listen? If I hadn't finally gone to ICU that day, I would have died that night. So I earned the right to say that because I didn't listen. I thought I couldn't be diabetic. Only other people. This one is called Coming Home. Offer a handful of water to the soil outside your dwelling. Learn where that water flows. Remember and honor your natal watershed. Speak the name of the watershed that now sustains your life. Trace its extent on a map. Connect with people and other animals and plants who have lived and who now live in this watershed's embrace. Take action to care for your watershed's flow. Perhaps you will clean trash from its margins. Maybe you will plant native grasses and trees with deep roots. With others, you may remove a dam and allow a marsh to reappear. You may walk the length of a river. Take action to care for those who share this water with you. Plant berry bushes for its birds. Pass laws to protect its foxes. Practice composting with its human children. And a tiny bit from near the end. Not the end, but somewhere in there. Mostly the book is stories, so the parts I'm reading you are often the parts that I slip between. Maybe they're more like poems, I don't know. Hold to rocks, to stars, to wind. These things will remain. At this moment, the precious body breathes, the scarred earth pulses with life. At this moment, legs move, and somewhere birds call through leafy trees. At this moment, before the next wave of collapse, we are alive. This is the moment we have now. This is the only moment we have. What is the opening here at this time? Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Ranae. Please, yes. So I'm delighted to thank Ranae, and I'm delighted to welcome Brian Thao Worra. He is the Lao Minnesotan Poet Laureate and the author of On the Other Side of the Eye, Touching Detonations, Winter Ink, Barrow, and the Tuk Tuk Diaries, my dinner with cluster bombs. His honors, the first Laotian American with a National Endowment for the Arts Literature Fellowship. First Asian American president of the International Science Fiction and Fantasy Poetry Association. First Laotian American member of the Professional Horror Writers Association. An Asian Pacific Leadership Award from the Council on Asian Pacific Minnesotans for Leadership in the Arts. The Science Fiction Poetry Association's Elgin Award for the Book of the Year and selection as a cultural Olympian representing Laos in the London Summer Games. Brian.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me, Ben? It's a quick thumbs up. All right, great. So see, I always hesitate about giving these bios out now because I'm always thinking like, oh wow, now I really have to live up to all of this here. But anyway, so thank you very much for having me here. This has been really wonderful hearing everyone. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Ranae. Thank you, Dave. Thank you to the grit pickers. This is just, in some ways, it feels a little bit like a homecoming process for me here because it's been a very long time since I've read with many of my fellow Minnesotan poets, surprisingly enough. And it's like, in fact, I was counting back the years, and the last time I read with Sharon was in 2008, 13 years ago, over at the Banfield Arts Center. So I remember that, and I'm still thinking about some of the poems she had back then too, which were just as amazing in their curious forms. But now, that's like, let me show you a couple of new works here, and we're going to be going back and forth tonight between a couple, because I see a couple of you are new to my work here. So we'll take a look at some of those old classics here and see if I've still got it for that one, all right? But here's a new poem from my new collection, Before We Remember We Dream, called Ironies. Ironies. After 30 years of poetry, I learned at least 100 words in no less than 2 tons. Unique to our journey as refugees, to fill vacuums and bloody gaps of our disrupted histories. Recovering families, dismantling enemies, identifying the official tools of allies, bombing us for our own good, their policies of destruction and resettlement, how to win hearts and minds in diaspora, from DC to Modesto, Anchorage to the Twin Cities, walking into 1,000 classrooms, strangers to the beauty of Vinchan, Savanaget, a heartfelt Savadi, gathering ink storm clouds to change worlds. One poem still can't tell my whole story. So some time ago, 2007, I've actually put up my very first collection, On the Other Side of the Eye, which surprised a great many people. It's like we were having a conversation about it just a few weeks ago there, that in 45 years, we had less than 45 books in our own words and on our own terms, and I've written a significant number of them now. But this is the poem called What Kills a Man? What kills a man? Always small things, around, holes, fumes, edges, split atoms, a second, a footstep, a sip, a bite, a word, a cell, a motion, an emotion, a dream, a fool, a bit of salt, a drop, a fragment, a true root of arguments. What kills a man is mysterious only in how minute the culprit behind the blow. We're careless and we forget. Even when what kills a man is another man. It is a small thing that kills a man. The whole earth, a single grain on a sprawling table, filled with the smallest things. I love Dave's optimism pieces here. I'm not sure if all of mine will arc as optimistically, mind you, but here's the next poem from this collection. Recovering from war. There's a deficit of contact. To touch is to risk. To trust contradicts wisdom, so ignorance prevails. Absent truths, memories, elicit abundant lusts hammered with gold, rose, and incense. To reform states we fear, may rebuild, to rewind time, but not remember how we failed the first time, that we now have fewer to remember with. As we rebuild to recover, some things terrible, some less so. We've been playing around with this. So I always like adding in a little bit of geography, and we were talking so much about rivers, I just have to put this one together. An archaeology of snowfloods. There's not much left to be said, some well-washed stone hasn't heard before. History is composed of broken walls and bad neighbors. Just ask these chips from Berlin, the Parthenon, and Cathay, or these cool magma hands of Pompeii, dark and gray. If you listen carefully in the right place on University Avenue, you will learn there's a minor wall near the Yalu River, dancing on the hills of Chin for the moon. Who knows exactly what I mean in every tongue worth mention? She's moonlighting as a curved garden serpent, coiling around old Laocoon, the suspicious one with his astute eye, crooning with a touch true history, and how the moon must laugh when she spies the tiniest hill in Minnetonka, where the small hands of the earth have erected a magnificent white wall, a snowy miniature Maginot, raised some scant hours before, already melting into a hungry, roiling river, who is not yet finished eating Louisiana for brunch. Let's try a quick piece on that. Actually, no, you know what? It's like, because we're all going into the Summer Olympics right now, I feel like I should share that the lead-in poem that was used in the Olympics. Then I was kind of surprised myself, really, when the emails came for the first couple of times. It always felt like, oh, well, yeah, okay, yeah, you want me to go to the Olympics? Yeah, sure. But it's like, no, we really need a poet from Laos, and you're the only one who's putting himself out there. But, oh, okay, I should probably take this. But, so it's like, what poem have you got? Give me a couple of minutes here. So this is the poem then. It kind of captured it all. On a stairway in Luang Prabang. Step as you will through life, 1,000 ways, 1,000 places. Carry a home in your heart, or spend years seeking the door where your soul will always smile. Do you ease the way for others, or just yourself? Or apparently tops. Do you climb great mountains just to leave them unchanged? One day, the heights of Holy Fusi will lay as soft valleys, and we only memories. But our children's children, will they too have a reason to smile? Yeah, Jazzy. Will they too have a reason to smile, like those dreaming strangers who finished their stares for us? Well, I guess we're going to have a few instances of puppets interrupt us. But, all right. Hold that thought just a second. Yes, what on earth are you doing? Yeah, that'll show you. Anyway. All right, let me read you some poems from the 2008 collection, Burial, and I'll hold on. Well, she's 8 months old here, and so like most 8-month-old children, then this is going to go as you well expect. But let's go with an optimistic poem here. This one is called What Tomorrow Takes Away. What tomorrow takes away. On a good day, the feeling of something left undone. nagging like Mrs. Tolstoy on your deathbed in Astapolvo. On a bad day, the feeling that something has been accomplished, like Mr. Tolstoy's last period for a book called War and Peace. I wish we weren't so obsessed with hope, because in a good world, we wouldn't need it at all. Temporary passages. Gone soon, the three gorges of the Yellow River, chipped Egyptian colossi, famed as they are, and in a flash, the anonymous man struck by a bus on his way to work. To say nothing of a modern musician for whom the term is loosely, generously applied. Laugh, Shelley, at these hieroglyphs as your own tongue decays. And Brian can barely remember the beautiful song of doomed sparrows outside of his chamber at the Hotel du Square after just 5 minutes. How can he expect the heavens to remember these tiny words he insists on writing for every young girl who's afraid of death? No, but I like it. I like the way that, with all the poems we heard today, they really challenge us to look beyond the surface here, to see those riddles, to see those deeper meanings. But Sharon was always such a great influence on that. See, here's the poem Legion, which I just did a reading of recently then, and I hadn't realized that, oh wow, more people caught on about how subversive this poem is than usual over the years. But all right. Legion. Our true names, power. Possession, our aim. So many means to read this. Foreign, American, demon, swine before pearl-filled sea. We die for many reasons. Good book, equality, liberty, fraternity, out of many, one. We yearn to be free. This, our unity. And so much for history. Let's go back to kind of my current collection then. Let's see. This one came out of some very real conversations with some members of my community back in the day. Contracting. One morning over coffee, we were discussing terms, negotiating with a bit of levity, the hue of a French postcard and an American biscotti. I mentioned casually, we say in the industry, you can get it good, fast, or cheap, but you can't have all three. Pick two. With a wry smile, he takes a sip of his hot macchiato. That's a good one. In my family, we say you can get people who are obedient, smart, or loyal. Pick two. Now, I suppose we all know where that got everyone. We shake hands, and I return to a world of ink, rife with all of their uncertainties. We're talking about technology a little bit today. Let's try this one. Moving mountains, burning stars. In Germany, a Kruppsberger 288 was forged to kill mountains, towering 96 meters and 13,500 tons, indifferent to poetic subtlety. This isn't the work of surgeons, cut into a mountain's coal heart, maybe an ancient vein of diamonds worthy of mortal beauties. Watch it cross a road, and you might feel more minute than an old man gazing at the mountains of summer of Gudin. Witness it raise some sprawling range. Dare you feel like a deity, some pure Vulcan, at his fire, who needs no scenery of mere stones? There are tiny men from Sydney and Beijing who smile to eagerly bring such tools to the peaks of antique Luang-Prabang, our groves of teak, our sacred caverns and aisles. In a small room in the cosmos, these thieves haggle. One day, they might reach Mars or Alpha Centauri, long after our own foolish names are rightfully lost amid flickering stars and cold galactic memory. Missing the beauty. A certain Sao Lao Nam Lai I knew on Broadway Avenue would win up her close calls with B-52s, secretly coating her home in cluster bombs during our war. She often mentioned her niece, who went back to Laos, a tourist, going from Savannakhet to Luang Prabang, loving it all except the endless jungle, too many temples, and long-lost relatives everywhere. I haven't heard from her in heaven knows how long. A heart, an unfinished book. The soul, a riddle of questionable destinies more than dreaming histories, nocturnal and relentless. A papaya, a covert French kiss on Van Noon Street. Let's see, we have just a little more time, so I'll do 2 more for you because I've realized that, wow, somehow most of my poems only run 1 minute. Okay, but interesting times, and this is a true story. A John pulled me aside one saffron morning after the chanting with a secret he wanted to share, like a war in the tropics. If Americans visit Laos, they'll never be president. Just ask Hubert Humphrey, Hillary Clinton, Ross Perot, David Duke, and John Kerry. My memory is fuzzy, but I also suspect John McCain. Obama was already president when he went, so that doesn't count, but we can watch to see what legacy remains. It won't necessarily be emails or Benghazi, swift boats or an obscure faux pas skipping flyover country like Motor Cities, but the ghosts of Lanchan have a habit of doing in even your most elaborate political machinations. That's a really weird way to dissuade tourists and sexpats. We do what we can against corruption and extinction, fallen skies, and blind ambition. He asked me to explain Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men, a tattered copy someone left behind a lifetime ago. We all might as well have been east of Eden. And as some of you know, it's been a bit of a long trip back here after some time out in California, seeing what it was all about here. So this was the poem that came out of that I'll use as my closing. Returning. Growing up in the Midwest in the 1980s, I ran into the idea of there and back again, of shires and armies and the mistakes of old men, to say nothing of monsters, of magic, an appreciation for roads and places undreamt by a youth from Vientiane, the realm of a million elephants. Going on the road or on travels with Charlie seemed so far away, even as the poet's road became mine. The other day, I drove past acres of olives, almonds, and wine, to ports filled with coffee and fish, dancers from Lanchan. There was a stop in Missoula, a memory of vows and naturalization, a hot dog under big sky, hounds barking like Cerberus. Keep going. Oh yeah, now you don't. No. In Sturgis, they love motorcycles and handguns. In Wall, there's jackalopes and plague-ridden prairie dogs. I wake up in the Midwest again, visiting toothy atomic monsters, a rusting robot from the future. I cannot tell you anymore who was invading, who was defending. A singer I know found fame beneath a clown's grease paint, while I tell you of stars I know where I'll never set foot. Memory is a writhing hydra, yet I fear this poem most when it is Hercules with a sputtering torch. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Brian Thao, and I thank you all for your wonderful attention here, and I turn it back to you, Mimi. Thank you all.
And long lost relatives everywhere you go. Well, we are all long lost relatives. Thank you, dear audience, for your attention. Grit Pickers, Old Time String Band, Sharon Chmielarz, Dave Healy, Ranae Lenor Hanson, and Brian Thao Worra. We are grateful for your creative work and your generous sharing. Paul Mattis, Zoom host, many thanks. I'm Mimi Jennings, one of 4 poets who organize these monthly David Shove Memorial Midstream readings. See midstreamreadingseries.wordpress.com, link in the chat. I haven't done that yet. for more about this series. Plus, in a few days, a YouTube link to this and earlier recordings. We'll announce there and by email our hoped for first in-person event above the Milkweed Coffee Shop on East Lake Street, expected to be our next reading, not confirmed yet, April 12th. On that date, Richard Terrell will welcome poets Claire Wamanholm and Brian Satram, novelist Chris Stark, and a fourth reader.